Hello and welcome to the Courtney Turner Radio Hour. It is June 16th and I have two more radio hours with you. So it's an honor to be here on WWCR Worldwide Radio. And I will be putting this up on my website so you can watch again or listen for the second time, and that is at CourtneyTurner.com. I spell my name like Courtenay. It is spelled COURTENAYTURNER.com, and that is also where you can find all the great ways you can support the work I am doing. I will be having to take a pause from the radio for a bit because I cannot afford to continue to keep going, but if you want to support the work that I'm doing on my podcast or my articles and the research that I'm doing, you can do that at CourtneyTurner.com. You'll find all sorts of ways you can follow me, connect with me, all of my social media. You'll also find a Buy Me a Coffee, little orange circle with a coffee mug in the middle on that site. And you can also do a snail mail option for those of you who prefer the analog. That is to Courtney Turner at 6041 Rural Plains Circle, Suite 110, number 106, Franklin, Tennessee 37064. And that is where you can send letters or fiscal support. And I also have my Substack, and for next week, I should have my article out. I actually had a whole show planned for tonight, and I was just about to record, and it's based on this Substack that I've been working on. However, I heard from a dear friend of mine that Constance Cumbey has passed away. And I was just going to reach out to her because it's been a year since I went to do the interview with my friend John Kleisek. So that was very sad news. So I thought, of course, we have to do a tribute to the incredible whistleblower on the New Age movement. So yes, before we do in honor of her, I also want to invite you to check out my Substack, and that is where all of my podcasts go first. So you get early access. If you are a paid subscriber, you also get ad-free content there. So I know some people don't love listening to ads. Unfortunately, I don't have control on other platforms, but on my Substack, that is where you can go for ad-free content if you are a paid subscriber. And it is a relatively small fee per month, and it helps me out tremendously. So thank you so much for those who are supporting me there and elsewhere. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. And I hope to be continuing to provide information and value. And yes, you can go check out. I have tons of articles, and I have one coming up next week that will be on the Delphi method, which I think is quite relevant today. But for today, let's do an honor of Constance Cumbey. It was truly a treat to be able to do that interview with her in person. I will be playing a clip from the episode we did. It was about a year ago, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, which is, of course, the book that she wrote, blowing the whistle in the 80s on the New Age movement. And maybe we'll start with that. We'll start with just reading some of this. She starts, this was in 1983, and she starts by talking about the rainbow. Although the rainbow seems to be only a colored arc of light refracted through raindrops, to both Christians and New Agers, it has a deep meaning. According to the Bible, the rainbow is symbolic of God's everlasting covenant, that he would never again destroy the earth by flood. However, the New Age movement uses rainbows to signify their building of the Rainbow Bridge, Antakarana, between man and Lucifer, who they say is the oversoul. So those of you who do follow my Substack, and if you listened to last week's radio hour, we talked about the Centennial Conclave. This was Alice Bailey's vision that in 2025, it would be the year that we would see the externalization of the hierarchy. And so I wrote an article talking about World Invocation Day and about all of these other globalist entities who have connections to Lucius Trust, and we're doing all of their meetings. Of course, the Bilderbergs are in the midst of theirs right now, and on their list of things that they're talking about is lovely things like depopulation. So that is no longer conspiracy theory. They are making that very public that that is an agenda they need to tackle. So she goes on to say New Agers place small rainbow decals on their automobiles and bookstores as a signal to others in the movement. Some people, of course, use the rainbow as decoration, unaware of the growing popular acceptance of its occult meaning and the hidden dangers. And it's just so sad to me. As a little kid, I was obsessed with rainbows. I studied them, studied all the, how the refraction of light made the different colors and why the indigo and violet were more rare than the other colors. And I'm on a mission. I think that we should reclaim the symbol. Most of you who watch my show, I know if you're listening, you might not know, but if you watch my show, you probably know purple is my favorite color. I have a purple cover on my microphone, and people tell me that it's, an occult color and reference, and I refuse to cede my favorite color. We should be taking these symbols back. Take back the rainbow. That is a God symbol, not a New Age symbol. So it's important to understand the significance, I think, for them, but that doesn't mean we need to give it back, or give it up to them, rather. So she then goes to say, this is her quote in the beginning of her book. She says, "It is the contention of this writer," meaning Constance Cumbey, "that for the first time in history, there is a viable movement, the New Age movement, that truly meets all scriptural requirements for the Antichrist, and the political movement that will bring him on the world scene. It's further the position of the writer that this most likely is the greatest apostasy or falling away, spoken of by the Apostle Paul, and that the Antichrist's appearance could be a very real event in our immediate future." Constance E. Cumbey. So when I was there, she went on and on telling me how Trump is the Antichrist. And she sent me home with 10 books that she told me were required reading about how Trump is the Antichrist. And she said that as soon as I finished those, that there was plenty more that were also required reading. I'm not sure that I agree with her on this, but she was very, very passionate about it. So this is her other book. It's called A Planned Deception, The Staging of the New Age Messiah. And when she signed both of these books for me, and in this one, she made all sorts of notations as to where Pat Robertson, who she was public enemy number one to Pat Robertson, because she, was revealing his theosophical underpinnings, and he was running for office, and so she exposed him, and so she was not his favorite person, but she put in here all sorts of references to him. One of them says Robertson, a failed prophet, and she puts the page numbers, and so that was pretty interesting. She told me the story about Pat Robertson several times. So she was definitely not fond of him. And then in here, there is also a whole, it's really interesting that we just did this whole, Centennial Conclave. And through that, I, did a lot of reading of Alice Bailey, which she does a lot of quoting of in here. And I thought it was just very interesting how when I was reading it, all the language, right? The language is the same for all of them. It's the same for Barbara Marx Hubbard, for these New Thought leaders. Even the Neoplatonists, obviously, this is translated from Greek, and it's, slightly different type of lexicon, but the essence of it is essentially the same. And that's what really just struck me, especially just reading Alice Bailey, because I didn't realize how similar it would be to some of these current people that I read and listen to quite often. So I did an episode this week with Will Spencer and Carl Teichrieb. I've done an episode with Carl Teichrieb on my podcast as well. He's wonderful, and he is one of the authors of this book, It's called A New Narrative for a New World, a compendium of terms to discern today's dialect. And he's one of the authors on this. They composed basically a glossary. And I thought it was so funny because Will asked us at the end, what can we do? How do we push back? And I said, well, I think the first step is really to recognize where the deception lies. And I said that struck me reading Alice Bailey. I was reading so much of her, and these terms keep coming out up. So things like co-creation, right? You keep hearing these same types of terms. And Carl really agreed, that really resonated for him. And he said, actually, we have a whole glossary. And I said, oh, that's great. I don't need to write one because I keep threatening to. So, but I have not gotten around to it, but they did, which is really great. And of course, one of the words is co-creation, but I just randomly opened this and I'll read a couple of them. I won't go through obviously this whole book for you. It's a few hundred pages. But so I open up and the first I see is Aquarian age. It's a sign of the zodiac represented by the water carrier or the earth age associated with this astrological sign. The term New Age refers to the coming Aquarian age, which is the process of replacing the Pisces age. According to astrologers, every 2,000 years constitutes an age. New Agers predict this Aquarian age will be a time of utopia, when man will come into fuller knowledge of his supposed inherent divinity. So we've talked a lot about the age of Aquarius on this show and on my podcast as well. I did an article last week, the technological Aquarius, a third way dream or digital dystopia. And, I call Game B the technological Aquarian movement. And this is this whole idea of the collective, the collaborative, right? This is what the Changing Images of Man document was talking about, changing the consciousness of man. And this is right around the time that the Aquarian conspiracy, Marilyn Ferguson, who was Willis Harman's assistant, was the pen name on Aquarian conspiracy to popularize these ideas of the New Age movement. And it was right around the same time that Constance Cumbey was blowing the whistle, right? I think the Changing Images of Man was, the final edition was published in 1984. Her book was 1983. So we're seeing right around the same time. And look at that, the Triquetera, the Visca Pisces is on the cover. Interesting. And it also looks kind of like an intertwined snake maybe, but very interesting. So that was right around that same time, and that book and the Changing Images of Man as well are all about this concept of how we have to move out of the competitive industrial era and the focus on the individual and move into the collective collaborative age of Aquarius. Then right underneath it says, as above, so below. This term is seen as key to unlocking all occult practice as described in the New Age book. As above, so below signifies that God is in everything and man is divine, used in Eugene Peterson's book, The Message, Bible in Lord's Prayer. This is, of course, a Hermetic reference, right? As above, so below. What else? Awakening new spirituality. Proponents say man is waking up to the realization that he is God, that divinity is within him, so panentheistic. Thomas Merton spoke of man realizing what he is already there, God. New spirituality leader Leonard Sweet put this on the cover of his book, Nudge, awakening each other to the God who is already there. Richard Foster told researcher Ray Yunkin that once Thomas Merton tried to awaken God's people, meaning through mysticism. And then, of course, we've got Christ consciousness. We have talked quite a bit about that. We have lots of recent converts in the media and in the public sphere who are professing Christ consciousness. And it is taught by New Agers to be the state of awareness reached in meditation, to which one realizes one's own divinity and the oneness with God, right? The oneness probably would be another one of these terms, and thereby becoming a Christ or enlightened being. And then there's this one is one of my favorites, co-creator, co-creation. We hear this constantly, right? According to a new spirituality, the emerging church advocates man is a co-creator with God because man is equal in abilities and nature to God. So again, very Gnostic. Let's see if there's any others that I want to point out. There's convergence, a coming together or unifying of ideas. The boundaries that distinguish different beliefs are eradicated. Let's see. We've got cosmic Christ. All world religions will eventually be bound together by the cosmic Christ principle, which is another term for the higher self. Thus, the cosmic Christ is the Christ within every human being. The Catholic Church now has its catechism, the concept that we were all Christ. Critical mass, while it's a scientific term, when speaking of populations of people, it's referring to an explosion in global consciousness, capable of touching or transforming all of humankind. The idea that when a certain critical number of people share the same awareness, then change can come to all people's thinking because of the critical mass, as in atomic explosion. A critical mass does not have to be a majority. If it is powerful enough mass, but unity is essential, and so is meditation. So Alice Bailey would definitely approve. Emergent. The term emergent was first used by the group Brian McLaren, Tony Jones, Dan Kimball, and Mark Driscoll, originally called Young Leaders Network. Sounds like the Young Global Leaders. When they left leadership network to go on their own, they became emergent. Today, the terms emergent and emerging are often used interchangeably. And then under that, they have the emerging church, which is a postmodern congregation that follow a loose set of doctrines, promoting a redefinition of Christianity and incorporating into their fellowship some or all of the following: Roman Catholic mysticism and contemplative prayer, Eastern meditation teachings and techniques, pagan religious practices such as walking the labyrinth, Lecito Divina Mantra, etc. Highly ecumenical. The focus is on social justice and cultural relevancy rather than the gospel and the word of God. Emphasis is on social gospel as opposed to personal gospel. There's another one I wanted to point out, the contemplative prayer, because there was the contemplative peace meeting. So contemplative prayer is going beyond thought by the use of repeated prayer or words or phrases, similar to concentering prayer in that it encourages a clearing of the mind of conscious thought in order to create a spiritual receptivity to God or the divine. They have global brain, the idea that minds of all humans on the planet are part of one mind. Some New Age views hold that those who don't agree with the principles of the New Age movement are cancer cells in the world mind that need excision. That sounds very much like Barbara Marx Hubbard. Fractals are units that form a pattern that keeps repeating itself on a grander scale. The term is used by New Agers such as Bruce Lipton, who say fractals are part of the new math. That is the science behind the God in everything. As above, so below. The term is also used in the popular book, The Shack. And then, of course, they have Gaia. Gaia is the Greek word for earth, which is also a biological concept that life on earth is one living being, that we are all one. Many use the term Gaia to apply to the earth as a goddess, says the Divine Mother, right? As a very trendy view today, this popular form of pagan earth worship came from well-known atmospheric scientist James Lovelock more than 20 years ago. Its premise is that earth is alive and divine. Wherefore, my dear beloved, flee from idolatry, is Corinthians 10:14. Of course, globalism is in here, belief in a one world government or political unity of nations, and a one world religion. Hermetic arts, the Western system of ancient magic, is usually known as Hermetic arts and sciences. It was named after Hermes Trismegistus, the supposed founder. It includes alchemy, Kabbalah, esoteric astrology, and tarot, as well as various magical disciplines. The higher self is the supposed God self within the New Agers to seek to connect with through meditation, and is also called the Christ self. We have global citizenship in here. To be good, to be a good global citizen, your allegiance to Mother Earth and or international community, and your values and actions align with the global consensus. And then, of course, there's the global governance right underneath, a development within international relations that instead of top-down world government, countries would jointly formulate treaties and global alliances, then voluntarily align national policies towards achieving those planetary goals, right? Planetics. And then we've got the Great Leap Forward. Of course, this is Mao Zedong. Green spirituality. There's the Fabian Society is in here too, a British socialist organization founded in 1884. Remember, it's a splinter group from the Fellowship for the New Life, which was a theosophical organization. And I wrote an article on that if you're curious to learn more about those roots. And that's on my Substack. And it takes a gradualist approach to socio-political change. The Fabian Society has a long history of deep interplay with Britain's Labour Party, right? The Labour Party was in a splinter group from the Fabians to take care of political matters. That was in 1900. And in many respects, it has acted as its ideological driver. Findhorn is in here, located in northern Scotland. Findhorn Community Foundations is an eco-village nestled near the town of Findhorn. It started in 1962. Findhorn Community, it became known for the interfacing of nature's spirits with humans, a location where the mythic melded with practice and activities. It is internationally renowned as a place for spiritual learning, green practices, and global networking and planetary modeling. And then Freemasonry is in here. And of course, you remember that Alice Bailey felt that the Freemasonry would be the conduit to create the one world religion. And then I wanted to, when I had, gone back to look through her book, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, one of the first pages I opened up to, I thought was pretty interesting. It was the chapter on the New Age movement as the Fourth Reich. And in light of what's going on in world events currently, I thought that was pretty interesting that's what I opened up to. And she has a whole chart that goes through parallels of Nazism and the New Age movement. And again, it's pretty extensive, so I won't read all of them to you, but I will read a couple just so you get a flavor of it. So the first one she starts with is, Nazism was an offshoot of the occultic practices and teachings. The Nazis had a bureau of the occult as part of the German government under Hitler. This was known as the SS Occult Bureau. Another such agency was the Nazi Occult Bureau. The New Age movement is based on occultic practices and teachings, particularly the writings of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, especially the Secret Doctrine. She doesn't say this in here, but it is said that Hitler had a copy of the Secret Doctrine on his nightstand and that he would read before bed. And Alice Bailey, who claimed to be receiving telepathic messages from the Tibetan master Djwhal Khul. All forms of occultism and mind expansion are permitted and encouraged within New Age movement. She says Nazism taught the doctrine of Aryanism and Aryan purity, and that the New Age would feature an Aryan mutant master race. The New Age movement stresses the doctrine of Arianism and Aryan purity. See especially Alice A. Bailey's writings and the writings of David Spangler. The New Agers believe that through meditation and other spiritual discipline, that they have become a new species, Homo noeticus, as opposed to Homo sapiens, and that Homo sapiens is a dying species. They teach that the Jews are from a different solar system, Alice Bailey's teachings, and that the Orientals and blacks are from a different root race. Oriental races must control the world, as they are presently our most evolved root race. Nazism featured hatred of the Jews, an ancient occultic doctrine of blood taint resting on the Jews, and that there was a need for final correct solution to this quote-unquote Jewish problem. The secret doctrine of occultism features hatred of Jews. The writings of Alice A. Bailey, which have been followed meticulously by the New Age movement, state that the new Messiah will not be Jewish, as the Jews have forfeited that privilege, and that they must pass through the fires of purification in order to learn humility. See the rays and the initiations by Alice Bailey. This particular passage regarding the new Messiah was written in 1949, when the entire world knew what happened to Europe's Jewish population. These teachings are also strongly opposed to Zionism and the possession of a homeland by the Jewish people. These teachings also state that what happened to the Jewish people in World War II was a result of their bad national karma. Hitler was an initiate of occultic practices, including yoga, Tibetanism, hypnotism, and secret doctrine of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and the Tibetan masters. Benjamin Creme says that, and I have that book here, that is called The Reappearance of Christ, The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. And he says that Maitreya, the Christ, is a 7-degree initiate. Entrance into the New Age requires a Luciferic initiation. Let's see if I want to read a couple of more to you, but it's quite long. There were many parallels that she draws. Nazi adept believed in that the gods lived in Shambhala. And I wrote about Shambhala in this past article on this Centennial Conclave, and the Antharkarana. New Age initiates believe that the gods are established in Shambhala, which is supposed to be in the Gobi Desert. Hitler referred to his scheme to take over as Mein Kampf, or my plan. The New Agers call their scheme to take over, quote-unquote, the plan. And in the transmissions from the Lord Maitreya through Benjamin Creme, Maitreya calls it my plan. Hitler forced his underlings to go through occult initiation rites. The writings of Creme, Spangler, and Bailey, and other important New Agers state that we will be forced to undergo initiation if we are to enter the New Age alive. Nazis believed that the roots of their Arianism was first found in Atlantis. New Agers trace their secret doctrine and occult teaching to Atlantis. The Nazis, through the Heinrich Himmler, developed a secret file that eventually included a dossier on nearly all Germans. The New Agers, through Buckminster Fuller and the World Game Laboratories, advocate computerizing all information, whatever, and allowing anyone who desires access to this information. For example, all purchases and resources, whatever, would be computerized. The Nazis instituted a program of quietly killing children with birth defects and mental patients. Hitler instituted this program after receiving a letter from the father of a deformed child requesting that the child be put to death. One way was to starve the child. New Agers have advocated and supported legislation in medical practices of euthanasia and death by starvation and termination of life support systems. One rationale given for this is the will of the parent and the inability to support children with such immense needs. The Nazis referred to their promotion of local anti-Semites murdering Jews as self-cleansing, and the murder of Jews as a cleansing action. The New Agers believe that a cleansing action will be necessary to rid the world of evil, defined by anything that causes separation. That's what they thought the Jews were. Separation is defined as caused by God-fearing religious Jews, Christian, and Orthodox Muslims. A common Nazi tactic was to burn down synagogues, sometimes with people in them. At least one prominent New Ager, Gina Sarimanara, has stated that when the people learn what the churches are really about, they will probably burn down. So that wasn't all of them, but she drew quite a few parallels. So, well, this was a very, very sad news, but she was incredible. She told so many stories when we were there. She had an incredible memory, and she was very, very passionate. She was funny, and she had this incredible library, which we were really fortunate to get to see. She let us have a whole tour. We did the interview down in her library, and I don't know, she must have had tens of thousands of books. These full, full editions of these occult and esoteric volumes of Alice Bailey and Spangler and what else did she had? She had a whole bunch of like the like encyclopedic type of books, and yeah, I'm very grateful to the work that she's done, and especially for helping to expose what really seemed like such a innocuous. I mean, I think I was on a show actually this week. I have a bunch of shows this week, but I was on a show this week, and they were very sympathetic to Gnostic movements and to Theosophical New Age types of movements. And they said to me, who could argue with love and light? And I said, I agree. Who could argue with love and light? I mean, when you put it that way, well, why would you have anything against love and light? But it is very, very deceptive. And if you read their works very carefully, unfortunately, we don't have to do all the sleuthing because people like Constance have done it for us. But if you read the primary works, which I've done quite a bit of, they're very explicit in saying that they believe Lucifer is the real God who has illuminated man, that will allow for man to have this awakening to realize that he is God, that God is within him. So it's a Gnostic worldview. Bailey and Blavatsky both talk about Satan being the real God. So they're pretty explicit. It's actually not all that hidden. Maybe it's just hidden in plain sight. But they use terms like Christ consciousness. They talk about love and light. And these things sound wonderful. So, if you're not very versed in the firsthand material, I could see how it would be quite deceptive. But they did just have their centennial conclave. And they did just have World Invocation Day, and simultaneously we are seeing all of these various globalist organizations who are very influenced by the works of Alice Bailey and other theosophical, influences, and the New Age movement, of course. And they're getting together, and they are plotting for world domination and what looks to me like a technological immanentization of the eschaton. They were having all these meetings about AI and these essentially these cybernetic types of control grid implementation. So I don't know. Maybe she was right, Alice Bailey, that we are going to see an externalization of the hierarchy. This is, of course, where these spirits or fallen angels will start to interact with humans and make themselves known. So hopefully, I think that the best thing that we can do is to raise awareness, and hopefully people are starting to become much more familiar with the language. I am super excited about this this book, The Narrative for a New World, the compendium of terms to discern today's dialect, because that is really what I noticed when I was rereading all of Bailey, is that these terms are pervasive, and it's the same terms I hear from all the Game Bee people, the same terms we hear from the show that I had done was on Ken Wilber. It's all the same terms he talks about, this co-creating, the synergy, these the Christ consciousness, cosmic consciousness, all of these types of terms that are metasystemic or meta-narrative, meta-crises. So a lot of these terms that you once you start to recognize the language, I think it becomes much easier to have a better discernment. So thank you, Constance. I'm not going to do a moment of silence for her because it's radio. But for all of you out there listening, to do some honor of her, I'm very grateful to the work she's done. I'm going to let you listen to this clip that from the interview that we did about a year ago with my friend John Kleisick, who has also done some really great work in this arena exposing their movement and their plans. And I wish it was just a religious movement, because then you could choose to have your faith, believe outside of it, but they're really trying to create a movement that will usher us into a global governance system, as well as I think they're really trying to create a cyber state, and I think that might be more likely to be the Antichrist than Trump. But I think we have indication from Elon, right? Didn't he do that interview with Jordan Peterson? He was talking about his supercomputer was in Memphis, and then he was explaining that was where the capital of ancient Egypt, and he then goes on to say that maybe that's where our new god will come from. So I don't know if that's the Lord Maitreya that they're summoning, but that does seem to be they're working on trying to create some sort of a sentient, controller. I don't believe that AI will have any sentience, but I do think that the fear, instilling the fear in people of some sort of a sentient machine learning being, will have tremendous ramifications that might be very dystopian. So hopefully we can recognize their plans, we can push back where it's necessary, and we can retain our free will, cognitive liberty, and personal sovereignty. And I will let you listen to the clip. I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Courtney Turner podcast. We have a super treat for you today. We are back in the States. I want to thank everybody who supported my road to Geneva, and we are back here in the States. And I have a very familiar face. This is John Kleisick. He's the author of School World Order. I am sure those of you who've watched the show recognize him. And we are here with Constance Cumbey. She is the author of The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, The Planned Deception, and really the OG expert on the New Age movement, and warning us long before anybody did. And those of you who have been tracking, we've been uncovering some of the New Age ties to big NGOs like the World Health Organization, the UN, and some of these neo-theosophical cults and their roots. So this is a true honor to be here and to have you with us today. And you're welcome. And if you've been following along, we've talked a little bit about Barbara Marx Hubbard, and John Kleisick over here has written a whole series, and that was that was actually how you got connected, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, part of my article series, I dove into the infamous Riders of the Pale Horse quote from Barbara Marx Hubbard on how she wanted to cull 1/4 of the human population. And the long story short is I was able to track down the unpublished manuscript from which that quote is derived, and it was Constance Cumbey who has the physical copy here. She sent me a digital copy. We'll do some screenshots of the inside of it. And so I wanted to come here and get her backstory on how she got it and get some footage of the unpublished manuscript. And so that's sort of the backstory of how we kind of got this set up.
Got all connected. Do you want to talk about?
Actually, I bought that copy that you have. I now recall where I got the copy. That copy I bought in Seattle from, I think, Verna, who was a close friend of hers and was running. They were doing their Center for Soviet American Dialogues process, and this was after Barbara Marx Hubbard had lied to me and told me that she had taken that book out of circulation, that she figured it was bad guidance. She wanted to. But they were still very actively circulating it and propagating it.
Why?
Because they knew the work that I did on it, and they genuinely feared what I was doing. They knew people were listening to me, and they like I said, now you see us, now you don't. We are all one until you discover they're all one, at which point we are all separate. And that was me then. It's not me now. It was just she basically she did an excellent job of talking, almost persuaded to me that day. I gave her some of my research materials. I didn't give her my only copy, but I gave her a copy of Earth at Omega, Passage to Planetization, and she even articulated what my problem was with part of what they were doing. She articulated it beautifully, but showed a month later, she was doing a radio program. She said, I like that. And the fellow asked her about me on the program, but they were fearful. I met Barbara Marx Hubbard under some interesting circumstances. I didn't expect to ever meet her in my life, but I had been told about that book and given a copy of the unpublished manuscript. And I was pretty shocked at the contents. And so then I followed up on what else she was doing. I'd been aware of her name since I discovered the New Age movement, but the explicitness of this material shocked me. And I was speaking in Boulder, Colorado, right around the time of the harmonic convergence in 1986. And the day after it was over, I was taken to a friend of mine. I had Christian friends in Boulder, and Mignon McIlvaney took me to the local New Age bookstore, and I'm looking for Barbara Marx Hubbard's book. There were other things there, and then I asked if they said there was a newer book by her. I said, "Do you have a copy of it?" "No, we don't have a copy of it yet. We think she's still selling it as an unpublished manuscript." And I said, "Well, I'd sure like to obtain a copy of it. Here's the phone number you can call." So I called the phone number and ordered one. They gave me an address where I could come pick it up. It was in the Gun Barrel subdivision of Boulder, Colorado. Mm-hmm. And I've got there and rang the doorbell. And of course, I'd paid it by check. My name, Constance Cumbey, and little girl opened the door. It was Gabriella, who was Barbara Marx Hubbard's granddaughter, answered the door. And then she said, I gave her the check. So I'll take it down to Grandma and come back with it. Well, and instead of the little girl coming back with what I needed, it was Barbara Marx Hubbard came running up the stairs. She said, "Constance Cumbey, I've always wanted to meet you. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time." And she invited Mignon and I to come back the next morning and have brunch with her. And I will have to say she's an exquisite cook. She made crepes and strawberries, and it was all done perfection. It was a beautiful sunny day in Boulder, Colorado, in summer of 1987. And we probably talked for a good 3 hours.
Wow.
And of course, I queried her about that book, and of course I removed that totally from circulation. That's what the thing she told me. And there I was able to find it a month later up in Seattle. So,
is the Boulder, Colorado, is that also where the event with Doug Coe, was that as well? Was
that was
also
at
there?
Colorado's, near Colorado Springs,
Right.
if I recall correct. No, I believe it was Boulder, at the Episcopalian Church in Boulder, Colorado,
Okay.
near there, and that's where Paul N. Temple had the Gold Lake Ranch Conference Center, where that conference was held. And I have to speak while we're still on Barbara Marx Hubbard. I was given a tape when I was in Seattle of Barbara Marx Hubbard speaking at Seattle Unity Temple, and which I listened to carefully. I wish I could locate that tape right now, but she, in fact, I think might even transcribed at the time. I wish I could find that too. I know it's lurking here somewhere in my system, somewhere. But Barbara Marx Hubbard said that, and I've tried to find the tape again and reorder it from Unity Temple, but this is going back to 1987. And she talked about the progress that was taking place in this movement. She said now they had their issue, the environmental issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and that they were making an end run around the others. And then she talked about the Russians, the Soviet American dialogues that she was working on. And this was prior to October 1987, when that Gold Lake conference was held. So, and again, it was the same couple that brought it to my attention. The McIlvaneys, Don and Mignon McIlvaney. It's not to be confused with the McAlvaney, A-L, but this was E-L-V-A-N-E-Y. And they called me and said they were going to go hear David Spangler speak that evening at the local Episcopalian church. And I laughed and said, well, prepare to be good and bored. He's not exactly the world's most dynamic speaker. And anyway, they called me back the next day laughing, and they said, well, you were right about the boring part. They said he was rather soporific, but we hold on to your hat. He sends something extremely significant. We are sending you the tapes. And they sent me the tapes of Spangler's talk, and he said the real reason he was in Boulder to speak at the Episcopalian Church was to attend a conference that had just taken place between, I believe, October 23 and 26, 1987. And the conference was top-level evangelicals and top-level New Agers dialoguing. And he said somebody was there from Spiritual Counterfeits Project, and they were the author of this book. I think it was New Age, it wasn't New Age Rage. There was a New Age something in the title. But it was released by Spiritual Counterfeits Project and co-edited by few. And that the theme of that conference was a book was the same as the theme of the conference. There could be unity and reconciliation with the New Agers. And the education director of Findhorn got up there and said how wonderful it was to have sang and been "We Are One in the Spirit" with his separated Christian brethren. Well, I had to follow up on it. And I made calls to Lynette Irwin, who was doing research in Southern California, the Anaheim area. And I asked her my name was so well known to them, I knew I wouldn't get anywhere if I called and asked for those tapes. But anyway, I asked her to follow up on it and try to get me the tapes. So her first call went to the Gold Lake Ranch Conference Center, and she said she reached the PR director and said, who was a very nice woman, and said and she asked for tapes for the conference, and the woman said, well, that conference was strictly by invitation only. And unfortunately, no tapes are available for sale to the general public. But she said each and every conference participant was supplied their own individual set of tapes. Mm-hmm. And when Lynette expressed disappointment on it, the woman said, why don't you contact one of your friends who was there and arrange to duplicate their tapes? And she acted like it was no big deal. Mm-hmm. And they and anyway, so good idea. So the next tape goes to our supposed friends at Spiritual Counterfeits Project, who were supposed to be on the same side as we were. Right. And anyway, she talked to the person that first answered the phone. It was a woman researcher, And the woman said, "Well, let me go check this out for you." And she came back to the phone and she said that they had, in fact, she was going to call her back. When she called her back, she said they had just now emerged from a 2-hour meeting where they had discussed this thing, and they said no tapes were available. The meeting had not been taped. Well, I didn't know what the latest theological jargon was for it, but where I came from, it was commonly known as a lie. So I made lots of phone calls to folks I knew in the Boulder, Colorado area, and who made calls, and I did pull up some information on it and started keeping a database. And I was told Barbara Marks Hubbard had chaired the event. In fact, I think David Spangler might have even said that in his speech, but Barbara Marks Hubbard had chaired the event at the invitation of the evangelicals. Now, that was a half lie because the event was co-chaired by Doug Coe and Barbara Marks Hubbard. So,
And can you tell us his relationship with Paul Nathaniel Temple and Paul Nathaniel Temple?
Paul Nathaniel Temple was part of the core group from the beginning of back when Variety was Vereide. Some people pronounce it Variety. I pronounced it Variety, but Variety, maybe not veritable, but anyway, Variety was the founder of this group, and he had been accused of having some pro-Nazi ties from Norwegian type Nazis. He was in the United States, and he had a a Goodwill Industries in Seattle, and then he learned English, they said, and then he started pastoring, and he was doing things all over them. Just amazing, the folks that were supposedly picking up on him from the beginning. And then a network they were setting up all over the country to meet with governmental officials. At first, they started with let's heal the labor relations problems in Seattle, Washington, and from there they advanced to other things. And then there had been a woman called Marion Johnson in Washington, D.C., and had a house, and these folks were basically, the 12 of them were using centers, and several of them were supposedly Christian movements that had distinctly crossed into New Age, more probably tying in with the Krishnamurti days and just immediately post thereof. And the Christian ashram camps farthest out, Glenn Clark, who was the popularizer of the one you asked me about yesterday,
Walter Russell.
Walter Russell. Yes.
So Terrence Howard.
Yes. Yeah. They were several of these things, and they met the New Year's Day every year at the 12, and then Abraham Variety came in, but they always. I think I gave. Let me grab the book here, without knocking things down. What Modern Viking, and what I have tucked in the front. Well, this is an interesting thing too. I didn't know where I'd put this, and I'm glad to find it again. Yes, this was the Mark Hatfield letter that I was considered a threat to what they were doing.
I read that one.
That was I think they were the Marion Johnson. Okay. Put on my glasses, hope that.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And definitely, if you are interested and you don't have it already, you should get The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. It's a wealth of information. She didn't, and I can't believe this was 1983, right? She did an incredible job. So if you want to help the Cumbey family, definitely, or just honor her, or just to inform yourself, all great reasons, check out The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. I will have the links below on my podcast. So if you forget, when you're listening on the radio, you can check on my podcast. I will have a link for it. Of course, she also has The Planned Deception, Staging a New Age Messiah. That was a phenomenal book as well. And I won't do too much more reading, but I just got to towards the end of this book, this glossary, and I saw a bunch of other terms that all seem so familiar to you. Of course, they've got the oneness versus the separation. We kind of went through a little bit of that, so I won't read the definition. Panentheism, right? Of course, pantheism as well. And then planetary Pentecost and planetary birth experience. Right under that is the planetary smile. This is, of course, Barbara Marx Hubbard. And they do say planetary birth experience is Barbara Marx Hubbard's a New Age Christ states the planetary Pentecost will lead to planetary birth experience. It will be a shared event in the future. The instant of cooperation. This false Christ states that everyone who sees themselves as part of God and aligns themselves accordingly will be mysteriously changed into the twinkling of an eye and collectively born into a new creation. The planetary birth experience will be the culmination of the planetary Pentecost and its false revival. The presentation of Latter-day Pentecostal-like revival and the purported emergence of this false Christ obviously conflicts with the Bible's true account of the coming of the true Christ. And then right under that is the planetary smile, and it's another name given for the New Age, New Spirituality, planetary Pentecost, the joy of force. And then there's the quantum leap, quantum spirituality, quantum transformation. We've got all this quantum, finance, and Mary wasn't Q really big on all these quantum things coming. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing that clip. If you want to hear the rest of it, I do have that up on my podcast channels, all of my various platforms, and you can find that. It was titled The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. Is my episode with Constance Cumbey, and my friend John Kleisick as well was in that. And of course, if you want to support the work that I am doing and help me to be able to continue doing research and maybe come back to do the radio as well, that would be incredibly appreciated. So check out CourtneyTurner.com. That is spelled like Courtenay, CourtenayTurner. You can buy me a coffee. You can become a paid subscriber on my Substack, and that helps me out tremendously. You will get all early access to my podcast as well as ad-free content, so check that out. And then I have some really great affiliates. I've got the myredlight.com, and this is where you can get your red light therapy. We also have the snail mail option, which I will read off to you again. That is Courtney Turner, 6041 Rural Plains Circle, Suite 110, number 106, Franklin, Tennessee, 37064. And we have a Venmo option at Courtney-Turner. Again, it's spelled like Courtenay, Courtenay-Turner. I have a Gives and Go as well. And then we've got the relaxsaunas.com. Promo code QUARTZ, COURTZ, will get you a discount on all of my affiliates. So check that out on my website. We have great affiliates, the Restore with Quartz as well. So check all of those out. And if you find something that would be of interest to you and enhance your life and support the work I'm doing, that's a win-win for both of us. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you will, consider getting a Constance book. And thank you so much for listening. And it's been an honor to spend this time with you.